is there. And a regime change to support that process, I think, would also be a good thing for the region, in the sense that what are the Gaddafi's reactions to all of this? He will very likely be a destabilizing force on Egypt and Tunisia. The whole issue of humanitarian crisis, which had begun and loomed in the beginning, first few weeks, would begin again and can be enticed. I mean, the idea of African migrants being brought into Libya and unleashed on Europe, that's something that Gaddafi talked about openly. So the world will be involved longer than it had imagined. There were missteps, I agree. I think letting an out for Gaddafi early on would have been a smart move. The Transitional National Council in Benghazi had also basically stated to him more than once that if he were to leave, they would not pursue him. So that's still an option. But Gaddafi doesn't think this way, and I think it's very important. You know, the first reaction he had to the crisis was to send one of his sons to beat up the people of the Benghazi. And when things came to Tripoli, he brought his second son to threaten the population by killing it. And he said, it's ours. Libya is ours. This is the mindset of the dictator. And when they say ours, they mean theirs, meaning this family that's been brutalized the Libyan people for a long time. So creativity is called upon and will be called upon again.
Professor Mattawa, talk
and
about
all options should be on the table in terms of
Professor Mattawa, can you
helping establish a different Libya, but also if the option of this transition can take place with less violence, namely that Gaddafi can somehow agree to remove himself, I think that would be great. I think the Libyans are not really interested in increasing the violence, and as much as there is a call for vengeance against Gaddafi, most people would be relieved if he were to just relinquish power and reside somewhere else.
Professor Mattawa, do you think the Western powers should intervene in Bahrain and Yemen as well? Do you think the NATO forces should just sort of move across northern Africa and the Middle East?
No, I don't think so. You just heard what the president of Yemen just said. He is willing to resign at the end of the year. And that is something that is new. It took a lot of popular protests to do this. What the impact of the Libyan situation was this, and I repeat this point, was that for a moment of time, or for a few days, it worked for Libya to kill civilians and to subdue the violence. Now, that's what Ali Saleh may have thought, and the King of Bahrain also is probably thinking along those lines. But a lot had happened in Yemen to lead to this point, and a lot would likely to happen in Yemen to actually bring Ali Saleh down, namely the resignations of the cabinet. This happened in peace in Yemen. And as far as I know, these people have not been killed who resigned. In Libya, it would not have been allowed to happen. In Bahrain, the discussion about a constitutional monarchy has been there, is part of the discussion. I think that may be something that the U.S. can still pressure the Bahraini king to do. Of course, Saudi Arabia is the real power broker there, more than the United States. But I think there is still much more room to force the Yemen and Bahrain to change, either for the president to step down faster and for the king to bring about a constitutional monarchy where the majority Shiites can actually be the majority.
Asli Bali, we give you the last word. Your comments right now on, as we have to wrap up and go to our next segment, your comments on what you see is going to happen.
I just think it's important to remember, again, slightly in contrast to what Professor Mattawa said, that there are civilians on all parts of Libya, clearly. There are civilians in the west, there are civilians in the east.
We're seeing a
massive bombing campaign which could yield civilian casualties, and I think that would be very divisive. I don't know if the strategy continues that we're seeing now, and we do, in fact, continue the no-fly zone and insist on a ceasefire line, which is what the Security Council authorizes, the resolution authorizes. It's hard to know what other result would come other than a partition at this point.
And what would that mean?
Well, that's a very open-ended question. I mean, that's precisely the thing around which there is no strategy at this point that I can identify. It doesn't appear to be any consensus around either partition or regime change among the allies that are undertaking this action.
Khaled Mattawa, we just have a minute, but let me ask you this two-part question. One is, what would partition of Libya mean? And two is, who is this provisional government that has been set up yesterday? Mahmoud Jibril heading up the new government as an interim prime minister, as a kind of interim government. Opposition spokesperson Nissan Gouriani telling Al Jazeera the Provisional National Council is a legislative body, but we need an executive body to take control and provide administration. First, the division of the country, then the new, what is this resistance government? And we only have a minute.
The division of the country is unfortunate. Everyone from day one in Tripoli and Benghazi all wanted to maintain a united Libya. The division of the country, if it does happen, I hope it will be temporary, and it will be the cause of the Libyan leadership that's now in the east and the vast population in the west to reunite the country. It will be unfortunate, but that's exactly what Gaddafi is counting on right now. Gaddafi is telling the people of the West that it's a Eastern conspiracy and so forth. So Gaddafi wants this division because it will give him a part of the country. The rest of the Libyan population does not wish it, and I'm sure the Transitional National Council does not wish it and wants to reunite the country.
And who is Mahmoud Jibril? Who is Mahmoud Jibril? We just have 30 seconds.
I don't know what it will mean for the country exactly if it were to be divided. What we will have, I think, perhaps time to actually begin to contemplate the future of the country without Gaddafi in some peace, eventually expecting that Gaddafi would implode, his regime would implode, and we will have a united country. But the desire for unity is great all over Libya, and Gaddafi is hoping to maintain a zone from which he could cause trouble on the liberated areas.
I want to thank you both for being with us. Khaled Mattawa, acclaimed Libyan poet, scholar, professor at the University of Michigan, speaking to us from Ann Arbor, and Asli Bali, teaching international law at UCLA School of Law. I'm glad to have you in New York for this day. This is Democracy